Add a Twist Scientist was written by Andrea Beatty and illustrated by David Roberts. And if you pay very close attention, you might recognize two of Ada's fellow classmates, Iggy Peck and Rosie Revere. Both of these characters are from other stories that Andrea Beatty has written. Anna Marie said not a word till the day she turned 3. She bounced in her crib and looked all around, observing the world, but not making a sound. She learned how to climb and made her big break, with a trail of chaos left in her wake. She ran through the day, chasing each sound and sight, and didn't slow down till she conked out at night. Look at all those toys hanging out on the ground. That's quite a mess she's left. Her parents were frazzled but tried not to freak as Ada grew bigger and still did not speak. Clearly, young Ada, with lots in her head, would have something to say when it ought to be said. And that's just what happened when Ada turned 3. She tore through the house on a fact-finding spree and climbed up the clock as high as she could. Her parents yelled, "Stop!" as all good parents would. Ada's chin quivered, but she did not cry. She took a deep breath and she simply asked, "Why? Why would she stop?" I will say her parents look worried. But Ada kept going. "Why does it tick and why does it talk? Why don't we call it a granddaughter clock? And why are there pointy things stuck to a rose? Why are there hairs up inside of your nose?" She started with why, then what, how, and when. By bedtime, she came back to why once again. Look at all those words, all of our question words that end in a question mark. She drifted to sleep as her dazed parents smiled at the curious thoughts of their curious child who wanted to know what the world was about. They kissed her and whispered, "You'll figure it out." The word curious, what do we think that word means? If I use context clues from the words around the word curious, and I look at my illustrations with all the question words and question marks, we might be able to figure it out. Let's go back and reread that sentence or two. She drifted to sleep as her dazed parents smiled at the curious thoughts of their curious child who wanted to know what the world was about. So it sounds like Ada is questioning things that are problems or that she doesn't understand so she can get a better understanding of them. Her parents kept up with their high-flying kid, whose questions and chaos both grew as she did. Look how Ada's questions grew bigger and bigger. She has more and more questions as she gets older. She's continuing to be curious. Even Miss Greer found her hands were quite full when young Ada's chaos wreaked havoc at school. Look at that colorful explosion. But this much was clear about Miss Ada Twist. She had all the great traits of a great scientist. What traits does Ada Twist scientist have that makes her such a great scientist? What do you think? Ada was busy that first day of spring, testing the sounds that make mockingbirds sing, when a horrible stench whacked her right in the nose, a pungent aroma that curled up her toes. "Zowie," said Ada, which got her to thinking, what is the source of that terrible stinking? How does a nose know there's something to smell? And does it still stink if there's no nose to tell? She rattled off questions and tapped on her chin. She started at the start where she ought to begin. A mystery, a riddle, a puzzle, a quest. This was the moment that Ada loved best. Look how she stays persistent. Even when she's not sure what the solution to the problem is, she keeps on going. She keeps asking questions and staying curious. Ada did research to learn all she could of smelling and smells, both stinky and good. One hypothesis Ada thought could be true. The terrible stink came from Dad's cabbage stew. She tested and tested, but soon Ada knew it was time to come up with hypothesis 2. So a hypothesis means that Ada is questioning a theory of hers. She has an idea of what is causing the stench, and she has to test her theory or hypothesis to figure out if it's right. It sounds like that first one didn't work out, so she's got to keep going on to hypothesis 2. And this picture makes me giggle. Look at her little contraption that she's made. It almost looks like an elephant trunk. Then zowie! The stink struck again just like that. Hypothesis 2, it's caused by the cat. The cat couldn't make such a stink on its own. It needed perfume and some fancy cologne. So young Ada tested. The test was a flop. She started again, but her parents yelled, "Stop! Ada Marie, to the thinking chair now! By the time we count 3, enough," said her mother. "That's it," said her dad. Her parents were frustrated, frazzled, and mad. "Why?" Ada questioned. Her mother said, "No." "What?" Anna queried. Her father said, "Go. You've ruined your supper. You've made the cat stink. Enough with your questions. Now sit there and think." She looked at her parents. Her heart turned to goo. Poor Ada Twist didn't know what to do. She sat all alone by herself in the hall, and Ada once more could say nothing at all. Look at our main character, Ada. How do you think it makes her feel to sit there? She's alone with her thoughts in an empty hallway. And so Ada sat, and she sat, and she sat. And she thought about science and Stu and the cat and how her experiments made such a big mess. Does it have to be so? Is that part of success? Are messes a problem? And while she was thinking, what was the source of that terrible stinking? Ada Marie did what scientists do. These are the qualities that make Ada Marie such a great scientist. She asked a small question, and then she asked 2. And each of those led her to 3 questions more, and some of those questions resulted in 4. As Ada got thinking, she really dug in. She scribbled her questions and tapped on her chin. She started at why, then what, how, and when. At the end of the hall, she reached why once again. She's staying curious. She's still asking questions. She's very persistent. Her parents calmed down and they came back to talk. They looked at the hallway and just had to gawk. Wow, look at all she's accomplished. No patch of bear paint could be seen on the wall. The thinking chair now was the great thinking hall. They watched their young daughter and sighed as they did. What would they do with this curious kid who wanted to know what the world was about? They smiled and whispered, "We'll figure it out." And that's what they did, because that's what you do when your kid has a passion and heart that is true. They remade their world. Now they're all in the act of helping young Ada sort fiction from fact. And she asks lots of questions. How could she resist? It's all in the heart of a young scientist. Look how her parents are now working with Ada, and even her brother too, to help her solve problems. It said that they're going to sort fact from fiction just like a scientist does. And as for that smell, what can Ada Twist do but learn all she can with her friends in grade 2? Will they ever discover the stink that curls chose? Well, that is the question, and someday, who knows? Did they figure out the problem? The solution to their problem? No, but look at them. They're still helping each other out. They're trying to help Ada figure out what's the cause of that awful stink, but they're staying persistent and curious, and they know they have to keep trying. It looks like in each of the jars they have their different guesses as to what the smell is coming from.